Okay, so today we're going to start our Unit 1, Notes number 1, which is solving one-step equations. So I'm going to go through this with you guys, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, so whenever we're solving one-step equations, our ultimate goal is to get the variable by itself. We could also say we want to isolate the variable. So we want to get the variable by itself. Or we could also say we want to isolate the variable. So when we do this, whenever I say get the variable by itself, we want it to get it by itself on one side of the equal sign. So how do we do that? We have to use inverse operation. So anytime we do something to one side of the equal sign, we have to do it to the other. But to undo an operation, we have to do the inverse. So if you have addition, in order to undo it, you want to do subtraction. And in order to undo subtraction, we have to use addition. And we're going to do some examples below to clarify what this means. The opposite of multiplication is division. And the opposite of division is multiplication. Okay, so let's go down and do some examples to see what I mean by inverse operations and how it works. So in each of these problems, we want to solve for the variable. So we want to get that variable all by itself on one side of the equal sign. So on this one, we have our x, and then we have plus 6, and then we have equals 10. So we want to get this x all by itself. So what's not allowing x to be by itself is this plus 6. So if I have plus 6, what is the opposite so that I can undo that operation? So the opposite would be to subtract 6. So if I do it to one side of the equal sign, I have to do it to the other side of the equal sign. So I like to draw a line down my equal sign because I know if I put something on one side, I have to put it on the other. So whenever I do positive 6 and negative 6, that cancels, and that just leaves me with x. And then 10 minus 6 is going to give you a positive 4. So x equals 4 would be your answer. So we have our variable all by itself on one side of the equal sign. And then we'll have a number on the other side. Okay, next problem. We have y minus 4 equals negative 16. So again, we want to get this y by itself. What is not allowing it to be by itself is this minus 4. So we have to figure out what's the opposite of minus 4? That would be adding 4. So I'm going to draw my line down my equal sign. And I'm going to add 4 to both sides. We're going to get y equals negative 16 and a positive 4. Since they're different signs, we're going to subtract them. And we're going to keep the sign on the bigger number. So 16 minus 4 would be 12. And since our negative was on the bigger number, we're going to keep that negative. So it's going to be negative 12 is our answer. Okay, next we have 4x. So what is not allowing x to be by itself? We have this 4. Well, you're like, well, this is a little bit different. It is, because what is holding 4 and x together? If 4 and x are right next to each other, that means they're being held together by multiplication. So we have to think, what's the opposite of multiplication? So the opposite is division. So we're going to divide both sides by 4. Because 4 divided by 4 is going to give you 1, which is going to give you just x, and then 16 divided by 4 is going to be 4. So anytime we have a variable right next to a constant, we are going to divide by that constant to get that variable all by itself. Okay, next problem. So this one, we have 1/2 x equals 5. So we have to think, what is holding that together? So 1/2 is being held there by division, because 1/2 is a fraction. So if you think, okay, what do we need to divide both sides by? You want to divide it by the denominator on that fraction. So we want to multiply. So we're going to multiply both sides. We're just going to put a little dot, and we're going to multiply this side by 2. And since we have to do that to one side, we have to do it to the other. 2 times 1/2 is going to give you 1. So you're just going to be left with x. 5 times 2 is going to give you 10. That is your answer. And we'll go more into depth with our fractions whenever we talk about clearing out fractions later on in this unit. Okay, next one. Negative 2x equals negative 20. So I have to think, what is holding negative 2 and x together? That would be negative 2. So I'm going to have to divide both those since it's being held together by multiplication. Now, if there is a negative in front of this number, you have to make sure that negative sign stays with that number, especially if you're dividing it out. Because if we don't divide out that negative, we'd leave that negative and be negative x, and that wouldn't make x by itself. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 2. These negative 2's cancel, so we get x equals negative 20 divided by negative 2 is going to give you a positive 10. Next problem, we have x plus 6 equals negative 15. So I need to get x by itself. I have negative 6, so I have to do the opposite, which is a positive 6. So I'm going to add 6, and since I have to do it to one side, I have to do it to the other side. So we're going to get x equals, we have negative 15 and a positive 6, so since they're different signs, we subtract. And we keep the sign from that bigger number. So since we have 15 minus 6 would be 9, and we have to keep that negative 9. So x equals negative 9 would be your answer. Okay, let's go on to the next page. Okay, so now every time we've gotten our variable by itself, we've explained what we've done. We've either divided, we've multiplied, we added, or subtracted. So whenever we're justifying our steps, we are explaining what operation we are doing. So on this first one, 4 and x are being held together by multiplication, so I have to do the opposite, which is dividing. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. I'm going to get x equals 5. So what I just did, to get x by itself, I did division. Now, a new term I'm going to introduce is property of equality. The reason I have to put that is because I did it to both sides. Okay, so we're going to write property of equality. Didn't give myself much room. Of equality. Sorry, that's bad spelling or bad writing there. Okay, so on the next one, I'm going to teach you how we'll kind of shorten the property of equality a little bit, but I want to make sure you guys realize what that means. So property of equality, since we're doing it to both sides, it makes both sides equal. So our next one, sorry, I can't get that recording piece to go away. Okay, so we have y minus 6 equals 3. So we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to add 6 to both sides. We're going to get y equals 9. So this time, the first one we divided on both sides. So this one we add. So we're going to have addition. Now, we have to think, did we do it to both sides? Yes, we did. So it's going to be our property of equality because we did it equally to both sides. So last time we spelled it out. I'm going to allow you to abbreviate it as POE, property of equality. Okay, let's go do the last two examples. So the first one, we have 1/3 x equals 4. 1/3 means we are dividing. So we have a fraction, so we have to multiply by our denominator. So our denominator is 3, so we're going to multiply both sides by 3. So we're going to get x equals 12. So since we multiplied on both sides, this is going to be multiplication. POE. Okay, in our last one, we have 2y equals negative 14. How do we get y by itself? We have to undo our multiplication because that's what's holding 2 and y together. So we're going to divide both sides by 2. Negative 14 divided by 2 is going to be negative 7. So what did we do to both sides? We divided. So it's going to be division, POE. And another thing, if you do not put POE and you did it to both sides, you will miss some points. So make sure you put that. Okay, this is the end of the notes for today. Oh, there's one more problem. I lied. So we have x minus 12 equals 3. What's not allowing x to be by itself? That would be the 12, and it's being held there by addition. So the opposite would be subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. I'm going to get x equals, so we have 3 and 12. Opposite sign, so I subtract them. I'm going to get 9. Since the negative's on the bigger number, I have to keep that negative sign. So what did I do to both sides? I subtraction. So we're going to do subtraction, POE. If you do not do the operation to both sides, which we will have here in the next couple weeks, you do not have to put POE. You only have to put POE if it happens to both sides. Okay, this is the end of the notes now. If you have any questions, let me know.